This is a special presentation of Farm Journal Television.
Today's farmers have high-tech equipment, from tractors to GPS to the hybrids fighting for every bushel. Here to help is agronomist Ken Ferry
There's definitely some things that we put into our systems pyramid.
and agronomist Missy Bauer,
So we're trying to create that true V trench.
and they're using the systems approach to higher yields on every acre. I'm Clinton Griffiths, and she's Margie Fisher. Together, we're Corn College TV.
Corn College TV, brought to you by Micro Essentials, the next generation of fertilizer designed to meet the needs of advanced farming technology. For more information, visit microessentials.com. And by Winfield, uncovering insights through data to help farmers be greater. Visit your local retailer or learn more at winfield.com.
Thanks for joining us for Corn College TV. Missy, let's talk about the systems approach when it pertains to water management. Now, why is water management a part of our systems approach?
Well, maybe guys don't think about this, but water management relates to so many other aspects. So when we think about something like tillage or planting populations or potential disease issues, all of that relates to water management. So if I do a poor job with my tillage program, or I've got a very wet, saturated conditions, then I'm going to lead to more diseases. So all of this actually does fit into the systems approach.
Sure. Through the years, people have probably thought, well, I can't really do anything to manage water. That's kind of, the weather is out of my hands and my soil type is really out of my hands. So how do I manage water on my farm?
Well, there are several things that we can do, and probably number one that we want to start with is making sure we have uniform soil density. So we're talking about a vertical tillage program or in no-till where we have uniform soil density and don't have density layers in there. But remember, with water, we're trying to do a couple things. In the spring, we're trying to do what?
Get rid of water.
That's right, get rid of water. So if we've got layers out there, density layers in our soil, that actually hold and pond up water, which can lead to more saturated conditions, lead to denitrifying nitrogen, maybe potential replant if it was right after I planted. So in the spring we need to get rid of water, which we can do if we have uniform soil density. That water can infiltrate down through. The second part of that is come July and August, now I want to be able to actually bring water up from that subsoil.
Right.
I can do that if I've got really good root growth and good capillary action to actually pull that subsoil moisture up. So all of a sudden vertical tillage or just uniform soil density becomes a big part of water management and
Sure.
something that you can do.
And there are other tools out there. There's tile, there's irrigation.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some more expensive options, but tile for sure. You know, we got to reduce saturated conditions in our fields, and we've seen huge differences where we've put tile in and actually allowed us to get into fields more timely or reduce the amount of denitrification or nitrogen loss that we have. Of course, if we're on really sandy soils, maybe irrigation is a viable option. Maybe you need to evaluate the costs and benefit there. Another thing that we can do to control, maybe a little easier, a little cheaper than that, is managing our populations and row spacings.
Okay.
So, you know, can your water or your soil handle more population or less population based on water holding capacity? So you can't change your soil, but you can change what you're putting on your soil.
Sure. All that, if you can manage a little bit of water, we can make some pretty dramatic changes throughout the year.
You bet. And then years of extreme, whether it's a really wet year or a really dry year as we've had in 2012, is where we see some of the biggest payoffs of managing water through these things that we've talked about.
When we talk about managing the water, another way to look at it besides irrigation is water table management. And today, with the ability, the software designs and installation, we can actually put in gates in the tile line to hold water in the field. So we know drainage is very important for getting water out of the field, excess water we don't need so we can farm in a timely fashion. But once we've got the water out of there, we got our job done, whether it be planting or harvesting, we can actually back that tile up or gate that tile. It's got a couple of purposes. One is to, if we get done in the fall and we gate the tile, we can eliminate some pollutants from getting into the stream. So we can hold the water in the field. Doesn't reduce the nitrate load per se in the field, except for some denitrification maybe and some gassing off, but it's from an environmental perspective, it can keep nutrients in the field. In the spring of the year, of course, we have to have that field ready to go, so we open the gates back up and we let the water out of that field. The idea is to let just enough water out that we can get in there and do the farming that we need to. Then we can hold that water and try to use as much of it as possible. So In a normal field, we'll pull the water table down to the tile depth, and if in the case of tile gates, if they're installed correctly, we can actually hold the water table up and walk it down slower, so we can have more reserved water for us in the July-August time frame. So this is a tile gate. The tile comes in this case, from upstream. The tile comes into this box and runs into a series of gates, and these gates are put in by the farmer. He would put so many gates in, and he'll hold the water back, so the water table will rise on this side of the dam, if you want to think of it, then spill over and go into the outlet tile to leave. So he can manipulate the water table within a field, within a tile set, by just replacing or adding gates. So this time of year, we get done with harvest, we'd put all the gates in and we'd back the water up. Spring of the year, you start taking gates out to lower that water table so he can get in here to farm it. And then as the plant gets larger, root systems get deeper, he could continue to pull gates out and lower the water table if he wants depth of root. So I look at it as two reasons. One, environmentally, it could be one of the ways that we can reduce pollution in the stream, but at the same time on some of our soils it would be a way to hold the water table to capture some of that water. Now, with tile gates, the tile has to be designed in the beginning for a tile gate. So we have to be very careful how much grade we put on the tile and how we lay it. So this is something that probably wouldn't retrofit into a lot of existing tile lines without quite a bit of work. But new tile design that's going in, if we look at where we can use tile gates, I think that, you know, could save a guy a lot of time and money, and at the same time be looking forward in the future as far as how can I best manage my water table. So I think it has more to do with new tile than old, but to some extent it can be implemented in the old as well.
Still ahead, Ken discusses nitrogen loss during a drought year.
We can tell by nitrate sampling there is a lot of nitrogen left behind in these failed crops.
But up next, we're adjusting population by soil type with Missy Bauer.
Over the generations, fertilizer, the unsung hero of the farm, has been in the background, quietly nourishing crops with very little fanfare. Until now. Meet the next generation of fertilizer. Micro Essentials.
There are 406 million acres of cropland in the U.S. Winfield is helping to make them work harder. Maybe the answer isn't a new product, but a new way of thinking. A way to turn data into something you can harvest, driving efficiency into every molecule. It's time to rethink what a business partner can be. It's time to be greater. Winfield.
When we're thinking about water management, we want to think about what are some of the things that we can control. Maybe we don't have irrigation, so we can't control how much it rains, but there's still a lot of things that are in our control. One example is population, and realizing that when we have different soils across the field, like we do here, we can start utilizing maybe variable rate population. So there's some soils in this field that have quite a bit of organic matter to them. You can see this part here, we're a little bit more black. We have a higher CC or exchange capacity in here. We could actually support more plants per acre because we have a higher water holding capacity here than when we get to some of the other parts of this field. An example of what we've done in this field is we've actually laid out variable rate populations. So as we're planting on the go, we're changing populations. This particular soil type that we're in right now has a CEC of around 11.4 and organic matter of almost 3.5. So that means the water holding capacity of this particular soil in this field is pretty good, at least for this area. And so what we've done to try to capture some of that extra water holding capacity is plant 36,000 population. So we've got a heavier population here to try to capture and utilize more of this water. Then what we'll do is we'll take a look up on the sand hill behind me. We'll look at the population up there and see how these soils really compare and contrast. So now we're up in the area of the field that it's sandier. You can see that it's a lighter soil here in contrast. So we have less exchange capacity here. It's closer to that 7 to 8 exchange, and the organic matter is much less. We're closer to a 2.2 here with the organic matter in comparison to the example I carried up with us that we're at 3.4 on organic matter and 11.5 on the exchange capacity. So when you look at these two soils, you realize that the water holding capacity here from this soil was much greater, where we could handle more population, more plants per acre, than what we do up here on this sandier hill. So what we do with the planter and with our variable rate then, as we come out of that low ground with the good water holding capacity, we just back that population off. So here where we've got the tape stretched out, we've planted 31,000 plants per acre. So in this field we range from a high of about 36 in the best ground with the most water holding capacity to about 31,000 here where we have much less holding capacity. So this is just something we can think about when you're trying to manage water. You know, what are things that are in your control? You can't control Mother Nature, but we can certainly control population. And population really does need to be based off, at least in part, water holding capacity of these soils.
Corn College TV is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
When Roundup came out, now we can leave our rows up. I call it minimum tilling. It's really revolutionized. I mean, it's made it simple.
Well, I think it all comes back to managing the asset that we're given. I want to be a steward of the ground, and I want to leave it in a better composition than when I got it.
I think it's always looking ahead at what may happen, just like what's happened with Roundup. We have to be very mindful of what is coming.
I want to grow more bushels per acre, but how can you do it in a cost-effective way that's going to leave everything in a better situation than when you got it?
Ken, we talk a lot about variable rating technology, but variable rate irrigation is not something that we see a lot of different places, but this is something you've been looking at here.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to manage the water table or the waterfronts out here. And in this particular field, it's not level, it's not uniform. We have sand knolls or knobs, as we're standing in right now, that tend to run out of water. So a standard water treatment on this field will give you two options. Either you water to save this sand knob and causes you to overwater the rest of the field, waste money and maybe even damage yields, or you water for the rest of the field and you let these sand knobs go. So in the concept of variable rate, we're trying to see, okay, let's take some water from the areas that don't need it and let's kick the rate up on an area like this that would use considerably more water during the summer.
Okay.
So again, the idea of being efficient as you can with the water that you're working with.
Okay, well, you've got some examples here of what this field looked like early on in this year.
That's right. This is a thermal image of this field that was flown under what we call standard irrigation. So we started out, everything's getting the same rate across the whole field. And the red areas are the areas that are showing heat. That means that corn's getting hot. The blue areas are showing areas that are cool, so they'll be getting surplus water. And from this map then we design a variable rate map to move some of the water in the green and blue area to the red area to try to salvage that.
And this is later in the season.
This is a later one, actually one of our last ones that we've just shot, and we've cleaned up a lot of these. Their sand knobs are still out there, but we've cleaned a lot of them up. Now what we did out here for experimental purposes is we have some of these towers or sections variable rating where we're putting on more water than we would normally in the field itself. We're standing right on the edge of one of those treatments. So as we look down the row this way, there's very little ears here, probably 0 to 20 bushel corn, but this is under standard irrigation, how this field would get irrigated. based on the water allotment that you have.
Right.
Now, by being able to take water from other places and apply it to this same sand knob, that's kind of the grain that we see looking back that way, probably upwards of 150, maybe even 200 bushel, where we're able to increase the water supply.
Yeah, and you
now,
see a lot more green down that way.
A lot more green, and you see a lot of difference here in the ears themselves. It's amazing how we can, hang on to that a second, how we can go from ears of this quality in a few feet,
right,
compared to ears of this quality, and this is at the end of the run.
Look at that. Wow.
So that just wasn't enough water to hold this corn through the heat. When we step that water up, in this case about 30% of what we normally would irrigate, we could do this. It's I think one of the more exciting things we've seen come along in irrigation in a long time to help us manage that water where it is. But we need the tools such as the weather stations and the thermal imagery to tell us how to do that. How do we build that map?
Right.
And that's kind of what we're working on here today, trying to figure what's the yield difference between something like this. We'll be harvesting this actually tomorrow, and it'll give us a good picture, you know, how much return on investment have we got to work with.
Yeah, and I think Isaac's back at the other end of the sprinkler to show us a little bit about the technology.
That's right. He'll show you how the technology actually works and how we link all these things back to our office and back to the farmer's cell phone. So it's so much different than years ago. We can, in a matter of sitting down and pulling up some software, we can tell you what's going on out in this field, and we're 50-some miles away.
Corn College TV, brought to you by Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Supercharge your phosphorus this fall with Avail to maximize the use of your fertilizer investment in the spring.
Supercharge your P with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Studies show that when you add Avail to your fall-applied phosphorus, you can see an average increase of 9.9 bushels of corn per acre. Avail reduces phosphorus fixation to promote more efficient P uptake to the crop for stronger roots, better overall plant health, and higher yield. Supercharge your P this fall with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer to maximize the use of your fertilizer investment in the spring. Ask your fertilizer dealer for details today.
It's time to demand more. With Micro Essentials, you get more from every acre. Through our fusion technology, only Micro Essentials combines 4 vital nutrients into one powerful granule, ensuring uniform nutrient distribution and increased nutrient uptake. The innovation behind our fusion technology means you'll grow stronger, healthier plants. Micro Essentials. Get more from every acre.
Hey, what's going on?
Just checking the fields. Yours are looking pretty good. Must be doing something right.
Actually, I got a guy.
You got a guy?
Well, it's not just any guy. I got a Channel seedsman.
Channel, yeah?
Yeah, I've been working with him pretty close to get, well, you can see for yourself. This is what I'd recommend. Let's get to work. Now this is what you want to see.
Maybe I should get a guy.
Maybe you should get a Channel seedsman.
Find your Channel seedsman at channel.com.
Isaac, back here at the pivot itself, at the sprinkler itself, let's talk about what you have on here as far as mechanics go.
A couple different things. One, we have an upgraded panel here, and one thing that's intricate about this panel is that it does have a cellular modem in it. You can see by the antenna on the panel itself. Okay. Also, this is a variable rate pivot that we have set up, so we can actually, from our office, we can load variable rate prescription maps from the office to the panel, and then they can be turned on whenever we need them to go.
Right.
And we can tell when he starts to pivot up, when it shuts off. You know, if there's a fault or anything, it would notify us of that.
Okay, and what about managing that? I mean, is that something that's going to be done more often than, say, if you just came out here and flipped the thing on and let it run?
Yeah, I think so. I think the management level of it is a little bit different because you're going to be applying water when you need it, where you need it. So it may take you may actually water less or less times, but it may take more management to figure out when you're going to need to actually go out there. The valves, which we see up here, are mounted up here at the top of the pivot, and they actually have a bladder in there, and they're turned on and off by water. So we have a solenoid further down the pivot here for each section. That solenoid kicks in and it diverts water to one side of that valve, and it actually closes those valves off. And then for a 50% water rate, it'll actually shut that valve off half the time. So if you're trying to put on a 50% rate on one section, it'll shut off for 30 seconds, turn on for 30 seconds, shut off for 30 seconds, and alternate like that throughout the field.
So kind of a pulsing system.
It always flows at the same pressure and the same flow, because that's what the nozzle's designed for, to keep our coverage and everything that we want out there in the field the same.
Okay, but we're just turning it off, on and off. So how does this all work in concert then? So you've got your panel here, and you really rely on the maps, I suppose.
Yeah, we do a couple different things to get them all in unison. One is soil moisture sensors out there. We have moisture sensors out there from 6 inches down to 3 feet. So we look at not only what the water moisture is in the profile, but also where that water table is too, whether the table's high or low, and where we have to water to meet it. We have those in different soil types and different elevations throughout this field, and they're all set up to wirelessly connect to this panel right here. They transfer their data to it, and then on the other side we have a cellular modem that actually uploads all that data to the internet.
Okay.
So at any time we can come in and look at what the water moisture is, soil moisture is, as we go through the growing season. We can make changes then, and because we have the cellular modem on the panel, we can upload new maps whenever we need to. We also, throughout this year, every 2 weeks, we've been taking a thermal image of the field to look at crop canopy temperatures, to look at changes in the crop canopy, changes in the temperature, which has a huge effect on our watering practices as we go through the field.
And so what did you see this year?
Well, we definitely have some sand knolls out here that started to burn up early on, and even though we poured more water to them, we did have a hard time holding them, which is the nature of the game. And we didn't, the natural water that we got this year was pretty limited, and even watering at full capacity, we had a hard time still holding some of those sand knolls. That can be due to the fact that we ran out of water, or the fact that our infiltration rates on some of those hills is a bit lower. So even though we were putting on more water, we did have water running off those hills, which is something that we're going to consider in the future as we make our water management plan.
All right. Is this something that that you have to build, or can you find these systems yet? Or are we still early in this?
I think we're still fairly early, but they're definitely available. Whether as an aftermarket system or an upgrade to an existing panel, they're definitely out there, and they're growing every year. I think the numbers just keep jumping, and I think as we move into the future where water management becomes key, as you get out west where water rights become key, I think you're going to see a lot more of this going in, especially as we start to try to control runoff from our areas, nutrient leaching, stuff like that, when we get a more environmental standpoint.
That's a big question, whether this nitrogen will stick around. We can tell by nitrate sampling there is a lot of nitrogen left behind in these failed crops. It's sitting out there right now in the nitrate form, unfortunately. So if we have seasonal rainfall and we have a wet fall, we have a wet spring, no, they may not be. That nitrate may be flushed on through and it have to be replenished. If we have a drier fall and we have a dry winter, or we freeze up soon and come into a somewhat of a dry spring, yeah, there could be quite a bit of this nitrate nitrogen that could carry forward into next year's crop. So that comes to your rotation. If you're growing soybeans next year after your corn crop, that may not be such a good thing, because it could create a lazy soybean that would give you some trouble in getting nodulated. If you're growing corn on corn, you could have the opportunity to harvest some of that nitrogen back. Probably the best way to harvest it would be in a wheat crop this fall, so we got something out there before freeze up, or maybe think about using cover crops to try to scavenger some of that nitrogen up in the cover crop and roll it forward to next year.